They're approaching that February 9th trade deadline.
Don't want to finish my career playing at this level.
D'Angelo Russell is going to be the player to watch.
Jay Crowder be outward and expressive about wanting out of Phoenix.
They're looking to make playoff pushes this season, but realistically, what trades are out there?
Trade deadline is right around the corner, so you guys know what time it is. It's time for players that are about to be traded, trade deadline edition. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. And now that we get all of that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Let's start this out with the Chicago Bulls, because they have two players on this list that might be traded soon. Starting with DeMar DeRozan. Last year, with newly signed forward DeMar DeRozan, the Chicago Bulls managed to finish 6th in the East, just 4 wins away from 50 wins. But now the Chicago Bulls are nearly at the trade deadline and are currently floundering around with a sub 500 record. And there is talk that star forward DeMar DeRozan might not want to stay in Chicago much longer if the team doesn't do anything to help improve the roster. In response to those rumors, it appeared that DeMar DeRozan posted a cryptic Instagram post, possibly hinting to the fact that he would like to stay in Chicago regardless of team success. Despite the conflicting reports, what he wants doesn't matter, as his future is seemingly tied with the next player on this list who, despite what DeMar wants, could help land DeRozan on a new team by the trade deadline. DeRozan has one of the best contracts on the market, as he averages nearly 30 points per game, 5 boards, and 5 assists, all while having a cap hit of under $29 million this season and next season. DeMar has expressed interest in playing for his hometown Los Angeles Lakers, but let's be honest, that's probably not going to happen. The most realistic destination for DeMar would have to be the Dallas Mavericks, as he would get to co-star with Luka Doncic and help lead an already talented Mavericks team on a deep playoff run, something that doesn't seem very likely currently in Chicago. Although DeMar DeRozan might have expressed some interest in staying with Chicago, the next player on this list already has 1 foot out the door. This past offseason, the Chicago Bulls signed Zach LaVine to a 5-year, $215 million contract that would keep him in Chicago until 2027. But just half a season into that contract, and it already appears as if Chicago might be trying to trade their superstar guard, try and get some assets back after an extremely disappointing season. On paper, Zach LaVine looks like a player that you could build a championship team around. In reality, that is far from the truth. Unlike the next player on this list, who doesn't just put up better numbers but also plays a winning brand of basketball, the Chicago Bulls will be trying to either get a haul of draft picks or young talent in exchange for Zach LaVine. And as a result, a team such as the Toronto Raptors or New York Knicks would be good landing spots for LaVine. However, if the Chicago Bulls want to keep their core and just trade LaVine for pieces that they think could fit better, a trade with the Indiana Pacers for Miles Turner could be very realistic. The hard truth that Zach LaVine fans such as myself need to accept is that LaVine is not and cannot be a #1 scoring option on a championship caliber basketball team, let alone a team that makes a deep playoff run. D'Angelo Russell used to be a top 10 point guard in the NBA, and he was even an all-star at a specific point. But as of right now, Russell and the Minnesota Timberwolves seem to be in a stalemate when it comes to a contract extension. We already dropped a huge video on D'Angelo Russell's career up until this point, so if you want to go a little bit more in depth on that, we'll leave a link to that in the end screen. But as a result, it looks more and more likely that the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to try and unload D'Angelo Russell's expiring contract to try to retain some assets. Although Russell might not be in peak form like the next player on this list, Miami Heat seem to be interested in the 26-year-old guard in a deal that would see them unload veteran, nearly 37-year-old Kyle Lowry's contract. The trade would work out for both sides, seeing that the Miami Heat would acquire a player that they think can help them compete, and seeing that the Timberwolves would acquire a veteran who could help lead them on a deep postseason run, which is far from the next player on this list, whose current team is begging him to re-sign after a surprise breakout season. Although D'Angelo Russell's numbers have declined slightly, he's still 26 years old, and writing him off would be silly considering the fact that the only thing that's really holding D'Angelo Russell back from producing is opportunity. This season, D'Angelo Russell has a career low 22.4 usage percentage. For perspective, the second lowest in his career was all the way back in his rookie season when he had 24% and was dealing with the late great Kobe Bryant's farewell tour. It's safe to say that whoever does acquire D'Angelo Russell just needs to let him take over for the offense for them to get back to being an all-star all-star caliber player. But the problem is, does such a team exist? Well, the situation's different from the next player on this list who still hasn't found a home, but that's not stopping him from getting a bag next offseason no matter what. Kyle Kuzma, unlike the next player, has one of the best and most tradable contracts in the NBA. After it was reported that the Wizards and Kyle Kuzma wouldn't sign an extension and that Kuzma was likely to decline his player option in the offseason. Most likely option left for the Wizards would be to trade the former Laker, who is currently having the best season of his career, averaging nearly 22 points per game, nearly 8 rebounds and 4 assists to boot, all while having a cap hit of just $13 million. This kind of production for the level of contract he is currently on is extremely difficult to find. And although you'll sign a much larger contract in the offseason, this makes it more likely that a contender could trade for Kyle Kuzma as a playoff rental, which is way different from the next player on this list whose contract has been on the trade block for what seems like forever. Some teams that have reportedly had interest in Kuzma are the Brooklyn Nets, Phoenix Suns, and ironically enough, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the Lakers did recently trade for Rui Hachimura, but if the Wizards do elect to move on from Kyle Kuzma and they could find the right partner and the asking price isn't too significant, then the Los Angeles Lakers are still a possibility. Ultimately, I do think Kyle Kuzma is the least likely to be traded on this entire list because it seems like the Wizards did make their decision with Rui and Kyle Kuzma by trading Rui. But just to give you an update, the last team who had interest in Kyle Kuzma reportedly are the Atlanta Hawks, who are allegedly interested in attaching picks to the next player on this list to acquire Kuzma. Who's that player, you ask? Well, none other than an individual that has literally been on almost every list we've ever made, and that's John Collins. What NBA trade deadline would it be without some John Collins rumors filling up your Twitter notifications? Ironically, just like the next player on this list. I mean, seriously, the yearly John Collins trade rumors are like a holiday at this point. Collins currently has a cap hit of $23 million, and that number only gets bigger as his contract continues. Unfortunately for Collins, however, as his cap hit keeps growing, his statistical production keeps regressing. This year, John Collins is on pace for the worst season of his career, averaging just 13 points and 8 rebounds per game, all while shooting a career-low 24% from 3. Now, it's obvious that Collins' production dropped simply because of the addition of DeJounte Murray and the emergence of Onyeka Okongwu. So as a result, he saw his usage percentage decline. However, with that being said, if you're getting paid nearly $25 million, you need to play like it. If Collins is traded to a team in need of a star, his numbers will bounce right back up as his usage percentage increases. However, if Atlanta trades Collins to a contender with a solidified core, expect the same level of production. But because of the size of his contract, it's unlikely that he will be traded to a contender. With Washington already listed as a possible destination, some others could be Utah, Dallas, and if the Brooklyn Nets can make the salary cap work out somehow, they're also in the John Collins yearly sweepstakes. After a standout 2019 and 2020 defensive performance, Alex Caruso had transformed himself from a nobody into one of the NBA's most well-known defensive specialists. These 2 seasons have earned Caruso a 4-year, $37 million contract from the Chicago Bulls, and since joining the team, he only brought his defensive game to another level. Problem? While Caruso was reaching new heights in his game, the Chicago Bulls were finding new lows in theirs. Extremely unlucky, but not as unlucky as the next player on this list whose career was flipped upside down after a freak injury. Somehow, he still can win a championship. But Caruso's luck has a chance to turn around, as lately the defensive guard has been in trade rumors that could send him to a championship contender. The Chicago Bulls say they consider Caruso untouchable, but how untouchable is a guard who plays just 24 minutes per game and is a part-time starter? Some teams Caruso could wind up with include the Mavericks, Jazz, Blazers, and even the Raptors. What do all these teams have in common? Well, they all rank in the bottom half of the NBA in defensive rating, and all of them have a chance at making the playoffs. Alex Caruso might be a highly sought-after player at the deadline, but this next player might be good, but he'll be lucky if the team he plays on keeps giving him minutes. At one point in time, it seemed as if half of the NBA wanted to get their hands on Gordon Hayward, but fast forward to 2023, and after a combination of freak injuries and natural aging, Gordon Hayward seems like one of the most untradeable players in the NBA. So why is he on our list? Well, for the simple reason that if the Hornets won't trade Gordon Hayward, what else can they do with him? The Hornets' playoff hopes are unfortunately gone. So instead of playing Gordon Hayward, a nearly 33-year-old, on the back nine of his career, the Charlotte Hornets are incentivized to give more minutes to their young forward. So no big deal, right? Just trade Hayward for whatever you can get and use his minutes elsewhere. Wrong, because Gordon Hayward is currently on the 3rd year of a $120 million 4-year contract. And trading any player with a $30 million cap hit, let alone with an injury history, is hard. To be honest, it's hard to list landing spots for Hayward because no one is looking to land a $30 million forward who's been putting up career lows in his age 32 season. Unlike the next player on on this list who, despite being age 30, still reaching new heights in his game. Jordan Clarkson is playing in the final season of his 4-year, $52 million contract, and after the year he's had in 2023, I think it's safe to say that he's going to get another bag in the offseason. Clarkson is currently putting up a career-high 21 points per game on the best field goal percentage of his career and has earned himself a spot on the trade block. Despite the Jazz's early success in 2022, when they approached Jordan Clarkson about extending his contract, he declined, which means he is likely to decline his player option at the end of the season as well, which would make him a free agent. With that being said, it's clear that the Utah Jazz are incentivized to trade Jordan Clarkson, and besides, even if he did re-sign, his age doesn't line up with the perceived championship window of the Utah Jazz, meaning he likely would be traded in the future anyway. Clarkson's main suitors will be contenders in need of a quick bucket, so it makes sense that teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, Milwaukee Bucks, and Miami Heat have all been linked to Jordan Clarkson. What do these teams have in common though? Well, they all rank in the bottom 10 of offensive rating. Clarkson is like the next player on this list who's also having a career season in his mid-30s. The only difference is nobody expected it from him this season. Bojan Bogdanovic is nearly 34 years old, and going into the season, it looked like he would be taking the backseat scoring-wise to guys like Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, and Jaden Ivey. However, it is nearly February, and somehow Bojan Bogdanovic not only leads the Detroit Pistons in scoring, but he's also having the best season of his career, like the next player on this list who is deep in his 30s but still somehow hasn't lost a step. Currently, Bojan Bogdanovic is averaging 21 points per game while shooting an insane 41% from 3, and the sharpshooter hasn't just earned himself a spot on the trade block, but seeing as the soon-to-be 34-year-old is on the last year of his contract, there's a chance that he's also earned himself another bag as well. Bogdanovic is similar to Clarkson in the sense that contenders in need of a bucket will need his services. For the sake of not repeating similar teams, one trade involving Bogdanovic that, although seems unlikely, is Bojan to the Lakers for Russell Westbrook and draft picks. This would finally see the Lakers unload the Russell Westbrook contract, and whatever picks they do include will be so far in the future they'll likely have a lot of value. The win for both sides, and the Pistons get Russell Westbrook to help mentor young talent, and the Lakers get another scoring option. But the Los Angeles Lakers have seemed very unwilling to part with those future first-round picks, unless if it's for a bona fide superstar. Speaking of a possible Lakers scoring option, what about Eric Gordon? Now that's a name you've heard on the trade block for literally over a decade, and there's a reason that at age 34 he's still on the block. Gordon has 1 year left on his contract, meaning that if he's dealt, the team acquiring his talents also have him back for the 2024 season. However, in all likelihood, similarly to the last few players on this list, a contender in need of a bucket will acquire Gordon. We're starting to notice a trend here. In all seriousness, Gordon is a walking bucket, and the only reason he is currently in the midst of his worst scoring season to date is simple. He also has a career low usage percentage. You see, the Houston Rockets would rather run the offense through younger players that they'll have on the roster years from now, not 34-year-old Eric Gordon, who is simply a remnant left over from the James Harden era. Gordon probably won't demand much in return, a mid-first round pick at the most, so what's holding this trade back? Well, his $20 million cap hit is why. So in addition to that first round pick, a team will also have to add a salary dump as well. Sorry, Laker fans, it looks like you're not getting Eric Gordon after all, but what about the next player on this list? That's a different story. Jay Crowder started off the 2023 NBA season in a holdout over a new contract in 2024. It's almost February and Jay Crowder still hasn't played basketball. What gives? Well, the Phoenix Suns don't want to give Crowder a new deal for 2024. As a result, Crowder eats $10 million of salary cap while he does nothing for the team. Because of this unique situation, it would make most sense for the Suns to trade Crowder before the trade deadline. For literally anything, something, even a bag of Doritos will do the Phoenix Suns better than Jay Crowder will in 2023. Crowder has been the target of many teams, including but not limited to the Milwaukee Bucks, Miami Heat, Philadelphia 76ers, and even the Los Angeles Lakers. And seeing as his cap hit is just $10 million this season, he's a lot easier to acquire than many other players on this list. Unfortunately for Crowder, it looks like holding out may have done him more harm than good. And he might have a thing or two to learn from the next player on this list about playing no matter what. Once upon a time, Cam Reddish was seen as the co-star next to Trae Young, the Kyrie Irving to his LeBron James, the Russell Westbrook to his Kevin Durant. But unfortunately, in 2023, Cam Reddish is on his second team and is eyeing a third, and it looks like it's going to take a miracle to get Cam Reddish back on track. In 2023, Reddish is putting up a career low 8.4 points per game. And although some NBA fans have given up on Reddish, don't be so quick to think GMs have as well. Two teams linked to Reddish are the Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers. Both teams have next to zero cap room left, so trading for a player on a rookie contract makes a lot of sense. The Bucks hope that they can turn turn around Reddish's career and potentially use him to replace Chris Middleton in the future if everything works out perfectly. As for the Lakers, of course they would like if Reddish developed on their team, but most likely they are targeting Reddish as a last-ditch effort to bring some offense to a team that struggles offensively without Anthony Davis on the court. Now let me know in the comment section down below, are there any players missing? Is there a player that you think is going to get traded before the trade deadline? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.